Hey everybody, this is Perch. This is going to be a little bit of a different numbers video, but we're going to look at some numbers, but we're also going to look at the impact that social media, and in particular controversies or hype, have on a book. And what you're going to see is the answer is pretty much none. Now, I expect some people will disagree with this, and that's fine. There's a lot of nuance in this conversation, but please stick with me to the end. Don't just, go off the title and start ripping away, because there is some data that actually tells a story, that actually gives you a picture of what's happening. And I think in the end, if you can get your head around it, might actually make you feel a little bit better about the world, but who knows? Specifically, we're talking about Moon Knight, and we're really talking about the Max Bemis run of Moon Knight. Now, Max Bemis comes onto the title and was fairly hyped as somebody who was going to deliver a really catchy kind of Moon Knight series. We'd had Warren Ellis on it, and then we had Jeff Lemire on the book, and then finally Max Bemis comes on, and he's promising a very detailed, deep look at the character. We've also heard that at least some aspects of his run are intended for what the Disney Plus series is going to be. Will it? Will it not? Will they owe Doug Ernst some royalties? We will find out. But this story, as I said, is a little bit less about Max Bemis and Moon Knight, and maybe a little bit more about social media and controversies and Moon Knight, and maybe, the end conclusion that nothing really matters. To set the stage, let's look at Jeff Lemire's run on Moon Knight. We go all the way back to Warren Ellis, but then at that point, we're starting to get a bit excessive with the video. So let's take a look at the 14 issues that preceded Max Bemis on this title. And as you can see, the title opened to a relatively strong debut. Again, had variants, had some incentive programs around it. 60,000, nothing too shabby there for a #1 issue of a comic, especially following up with Warren Ellis' series, which was considered reasonably good. I don't know. It was certainly critically acclaimed. But the title, as expected from Marvel, immediately bumps down to 35,000, and then you see an interesting little buck up. So what happens here is the retailers are ordering away, and there's a little bit more buzz on this series, and so you see the title actually improve in issues 3 through 6, coming really around 40,000. But by issue 6, the party was over, and the title then consistently slid from ultimately 33,000 down to 24. This book over the course, the trend was pretty typical for Marvel. It had a 55% trend decrease, which is higher than normal for what Marvel has done. Removing that first issue doesn't help a whole lot. This is why you do trending. This is the whole point of trend lines. It takes it down to 48%. But this video isn't so much about Lemire's run, it's about Max Bemis' run. So if we just throw his trend, first of all, we've got an odd little middle bump in there, but check out his sales. Very strong first issue, fairly strong last issue, which it was an extra-sized anniversary issue, and a little thing in the middle. But generally, the series is really remarkable for doing pretty much nothing. If you look at the trend drop, the first issue goes from basically has a 42% drop. If you take out that first issue, you still get a 29% drop from issue 189 to issue 199. We're also taking out that last issue. I'll show you why in a moment. The high point in the series for both, for Lemire, was 60,000. The high point for Max Bemis was 50,000. The low point was 24 for Lemire and 17,344 for Bemis. Generally, when we're talking about a comic and we're down in the low 20s and into the teens, it really kind of sets up what is the point of all of this? Well, let's go through it and maybe reinforce that message a little bit. Looking just at Bemis' run, here we have it from start to finish. We see a couple overships. We basically had 3 during the courses, and we had an anniversary issue. And there is some claim, although I can't validate it, that final issue, issue 200, was also overshipped, which would be very confusing since it was the final issue, and the idea of overshipping it for marketing reasons makes no sense whatsoever. But I wouldn't put it past Marvel to do something like that. It just would have no business value at all. Definitely that last issue did better. A couple reasons. It did have some variant covers and other things going on. But anyway, this is what it looks like. A fairly unremarkable, slow descent into pretty much nothing. Our first issue, again, 50,000. That second issue dropped down to 23. And really, it was almost all downhill from there until you get to issue 194, which had a brief bump up. That was an overship. And same thing with the next one until we settle back down into 18,000 for 196. If you take away the two overships in the middle, it's just a descent. That's what this series is. A fairly unremarkable, fairly slow, steady atrophy. And finally, we wind up that last issue with 33, but again, this was an anniversary issue and seemed a little bit strange. Okay, so if we look at our trend line again, here's what we've got, 38,000 down to 22. If we take out that first and last issue, which is a far more accurate representation of what's going on, you see a trend from 23,000 to 17,000. Now, I want to point out at this point that does any of this really matter? So just as an aside, I have a very rough back of the napkin kind of estimate. There's about 2,500 comic shops in the world, according to the last reasonable data we have. Undoubtedly, with the pandemic and everything, it's probably a little smaller than that, but let's say 2,500 is our number because it's a nice, easy number. If we take that and we just divide up the amount of copies that are being sold, just for context, we're talking about 6 copies of this comic we're going out to every shop. 6. I mean, 6. Like, what really matters at that point? But anyway, continuing. So if we take this math the way it is, over the course of the 11 issues in the middle here, we had a 26% decrease, like we said. So over this period, by the way, Marvel was averaging a 38% trend decrease, much worse. So in this weird, bizarre way, Moon Knight by Max Bemis was definitely overperforming. It absolutely was overperforming other titles. But again, you can count that as a success, but we're selling under 20,000 copies. So is that a success? Not really. It's saying when you hit the bottom, you hit the bottom. That's kind of the message that's happening here. So I wanted to throw this out there because this really brings it home. The red line here is the average Marvel unit sold right here during this period, okay? This is the average. And the yellow line here is the bottom 20% of Marvel units sold. And basically what it says is for the course of this title, its entire life, it basically hovered at or below the bottom 20% of the line. Now it's Moon Knight. Maybe that's not a big surprise. It's not. But keep this in mind when we start to get into what was going on at social media at the time. So when Max Bemis came onto this book, Marvel did some tweets and some promotion for him. Really kind of, they did some articles and they basically put out some information promoting it around issue 189. And they followed up with, a lot of conversation. Now, I threw this tweet up here because Marvel promotes the book. Max Bemis comes in with, yay, he's selling it. And look at this, it has 3 likes. 3. This was taken, today. This is from 2017. It's got 3 likes to it. All right. The original tweet by Marvel had 536 likes. The whole comic sold 23,000 copies to the resellers, which you start to get the indication that maybe, just maybe, the stuff that's going on social media has no real connection at all to what's going on. But the companies continue to pump money into it. But what happens when something negative happens? Well, shortly after Marvel decided to start promoting the book, Max Bemis talked about people feasting on his ass as a general, I don't know what the capital A there for can't is supposed to mean there, but here is Max Bemis talking about his ass. And again, some engagement. People got excited about that, I suppose. But look at the sales. Nothing really happened. And as we play this thing out, back around 195, when they were overshipping it, the second month of overships, Marvel remembers that they should probably promote Max Bemis again, so they do so, and they put some more love in there. But shortly thereafter, Max Bemis and Doug Ernst seem to get in some kind of spat, and they introduce this character called Doug Ernst, which gets a lot of people angry to the point that they start questioning, Joe Quesada and others about what this character is, and basically, his critics. Now, just hopefully, I don't need to say it out here, but if you're a creator and you're telling people to feast on your ass, and maybe inventing characters that with the same name as your critics, so that they can be Nazis in a book, I mean that's not a good thing to do. Nothing of what I'm showing you, by the way, is saying that's a good idea and what you should do. What I am showing is, despite all of that going on in social media, both the hype, the promotion, and the negativity, nothing was happening with the numbers. It was descending albeit you could argue at an even slower rate than what was going on in Marvel at the time, but nothing is really selling. There were lots of people involved in this whole thing that were talking about how they were going to support this book even more. Just like there were a lot of people saying they were going to, basically blacklist it and never buy it again. There was equal numbers. You might remember the both crowds, both sides of the coin battling over, we're going to support the book, and people saying we're not. Well, here are the numbers. Nobody really, nothing happened. You didn't see some plummet of sales, and you didn't see some meteoric rise of sales either. Now, frankly, I'll just throw this out there. The more concerning one is the lack of a rise in sales, because Marvel at this point was using their bully pulpit and their position to promote the book, and yet nothing was going on. The only bump here we have in the middle is when they artificially inflated it themselves by overshipping it. Generally, it was all just downward. Now, by the way, some people have pointed out, hey, this is sales to stores. So this isn't sales to customers. So it could be the customers just stopped buying it. Yes, it is true. It could be that retail shops were so stupid that even after the feast on my ass comment in number 190, that they proceeded to just continue to buy the comic like normal, even though it wasn't selling on the shelf. It's possible. Remember, it's only averaging 6 issues total per store. So, it's certainly possible the shops are just buying this thing for no apparent reason. It's just not selling. Yes, but it's unlikely. Stores are not in the habit of just keeping extra stock for no apparent reason hanging around. What this most likely tells us is that the boycotts, the I'm not buying this title people, they weren't buying it in the first place. And the people who said we're absolutely going to buy it because good for you for taking it to the baddies, they weren't buying it either. Nobody was buying it. Said with emojis, it was mostly poop. So let's be honest here. Again, like I said, for all the talk of boycotts and dropping the title, the comic dropped slower than average. In many cases, it was a success story, which is cool. There's no larger drop during any of the big controversial moments that the creator had. But hold on, there's no significant increase either. There's no indication, in fact, that social media hype or criticism did a damn thing in either direction. But all of this is underscored by the fact that the book was already selling terribly. It had hovered into the bottom 20% of the line. Now, yes, it's Moon Knight, but again, if nobody cares, then nobody cares. So as we look at this picture again, I'm really left with going back to Max Bemis's tweet. Yay, 3 likes from more than 3 years ago. Yay. Now, you might say, hey, this is unfair, and you cherry pick, this is Moon Knight by one guy, and what about some of these other books? Well, here's America Chavez, just for kicks. We'll go through this in more detail later, but I'm leaving those red and yellow lines up here to kind of show you where the title was selling. Remember, the yellow line is below 20%, the bottom 20% of what Marvel's saying, and in fact, so many of the titles are below 20%, it's forced us to introduce the blue line of below 10%, which is what you're seeing here. There's only one issue in the entire course of America Chavez was above the Marvel's average. 9 of the 12 issues were below 20%. 6 of the 12 were below 5%. How about that? That sucks. But once again, look at that run of titles. Other than that one in the middle, which was again another overship situation, you don't see people running from this title. You see people never getting it in the first place. But hey, let's look at Iceman. Again, 12 of the 16 issues were below 20%. 2 of them were below 5%. This is how the comic set out. There was actually no single issue of Iceman that ever broke Marvel's average. Here's The Unstoppable Wasp. Look at this title. Almost every title, 14 of the 18 books are below 5% of sales. 17 of 18 are below 20%. The relaunch that they did of this series, the relaunch number 1 issue was in the bottom 20%. The relaunch issue. I mean, what are you going to do with titles like this? This is just not selling. Oh, but wait a minute, there's the trades. Well, not really, because here's Moon Knight, America, Iceman, The Unstoppable Wasp. Here's the trailed sales for their volumes. Now, it's worth noting that for all of these books, all 4 of them, there was only 1 month offered of trade sales. You can only find 1 month in Diamond for the numbers for this, which just indicates there was not demand to go back and distribute again. 1 month was enough for everything. If you look at the Amazon sales, hey, good news, Moon Knight in America have actually bumped up recently. Moon Knight's selling a crisp 78 copies per month. per month worldwide. The two books went up dramatically after the MCU show announcements about a month and a half ago. They were selling in the same range as Iceman and Unstoppable Wasp 3 months ago. Unstoppable Wasp is selling 5 copies a month of Volume 1 of the trade. Oh, but what about Scholastic? Well, Scholastic and schools and libraries in general definitely have an impact, particularly when we're talking about Wasp and perhaps Iceman in America. But frankly, it's less than you think. The titles haven't gone back for print. That is an indicator of demand. The Amazon numbers do tend to tell a clear story of what's happening. But also, and this just gets to a common sense thing, if there were a high volume of sales somewhere else, you wouldn't have seen the titles canceled and the creative teams dispersed. It would have made complete sense for Marvel to continue to pump out copies of Unstoppable Wasp in its floppy version if the trades were selling like gangbusters at Scholastic. But they're not producing new material. We're finally getting a new volume of Wasp now, but we went quite a while having nothing. Does that make any sense? If the title was doing great, they would have continued to put it out. If you look at digital, you also do not see any of these books trending. You don't see any of them in the bestseller area. None. Now, to be fair and to be honest about it, it is certainly possible that there are hundreds of thousands of copies of these books going out through Scholastic. It is possible. And it's also possible that Marvel's just so stupid that they're willing to let these books go out of print and not solicit new material and let the creators go off and do their own thing, even though they've got bestsellers on their hands. It's certainly possible, but extremely unlikely. Extremely. For that, you have to buy into the fact that Marvel has absolutely no idea what to do itself. And I get you. I know there's several people who think that. But it just doesn't make sense. These books were allowed to slide away. Nothing really matters. That's the point here. No, I'm just kidding. But seriously, social media controversies are not good for companies or creators. No doubt about it. If you track out people's careers long term, it doesn't help. I mean, Gabby Rivera and Sina Grace and Max Bemis, they've all gone on to do other things, smaller things in comics. Now, many of them seem happier having left Marvel, so that's great for them, but none of these things are good for any kind of long-term career, even if it doesn't feel this way on the surface. But the key here is that if a book is a low-selling title that can't even catch the attention of people for its content, it doesn't really matter. Now, it matters on a be a good person. It matters in terms of don't have your brand associated with a bunch of nonsense. Definitely that matters. But here's the core truth. The title needs to be considered good for anything to happen in relation to social media, positive or negative. If nobody cares about the book, if it's selling in the bottom 5%, it doesn't tend to matter. And the numbers prove this out. There aren't this flood of people leaving America Chavez or Moon Knight or any of these books when the creator does something stupid. But why? Because they weren't there to begin with. Which begs the question, what value is social media really providing anyway? Now, in the end, look, I'm not dumping on social media, and I definitely, absolutely 100% believe that you can market things properly and correctly on social media to get some additional, attention for your book or your project or as a creator what you're doing. And I absolutely, absolutely believe that creators, as well as fans, hell, everyone, should just try and be nice to each other and professional and not say things like feast on my ass. But if the book is uninteresting, if the book is not getting anybody's attention, if the book is selling in the bottom tier, then whether you're super nice or whether you're a super jerk, it's really not going to matter. The quality does come first. You can't bluff your way into higher sales or, frankly, insult your way into lower sales if the sales are low to begin with. Anyway, I'm sure I'll get some disagreement on all this, and I hope you heard what I said. I think people should be professional. I think you definitely need to do that. But in the end of the day, a bad book is a bad book. Now, I guess I should also say, you may have liked some of the books that I showed here. That's fine. If you enjoy them, that's great. But the masses didn't. That's the key. I like tons of things that the masses do not like. Please, I think it's time in 2021 at least for us all to get over this idea of, hey, just because I like it means it's popular and important and you can't say a bad word about it. Look, that's just not the way the world works. There's such a thing as pop culture. There's such a thing as, trending stuff. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Maroon 5 sucks, but they do sell a lot of albums. Anyway, I hope this was helpful or didn't just aggravate the living hell out of a lot of you. Do me a favor. Let me know your comments below. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me all the ways that I got it wrong. But the data is still the data. So by all means, please don't go in the comments and tell me, hey, don't you think these creators should be professional on social media? Yes, I said that already, like 50 times already. Yes, I do. I'm just saying there's not as tight a correlation as you think. Anyway, like and subscribe or dislike as the whim might take you. Follow me on social media where I'll be wasting my time as well, like everybody else. Or you can look in the description of the video and see links about to email me and all that kind of stuff. But most importantly, thanks for watching.